So good morning, everyone. My name is Natalie Kay, and I'm here to tell you why music isn't cheesecake. So I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, so I want to talk a little bit about why I chose this for my project first. So I've been playing clarinet since the 5th grade, and I've always loved music. And then when I got to high school, I really loved music. I loved band, and I get really into it. And I've also always loved science. And so I always knew I wanted to combine those two into my project. I just didn't really know what shape it would take. And it turned into this. It turned into music not being cheesecake. So back to that. It seems pretty obvious that we didn't evolve to love cheesecake, but we evolved to love foods that are high in fats and are high in calories. So cheesecake is great because it checks both those boxes, but we don't need it to survive. And what's been happening a lot, that same logic has been applied to music, saying that we evolved to love language and communication and challenging our brains, but not necessarily music. It happens to check those boxes, but if it were gone tomorrow, it wouldn't change the world. And so at this point in my research, I'm sitting here, and some of you may be thinking this too. I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Like, how can this be true? Like, what do you mean music isn't important? What do you mean it hasn't changed the world? It has. I mean, how can this possibly be true looking at what we see music do? And I mean, if I'm being honest, cheesecake hasn't made me cry. I mean, if it has for you, I'm impressed. It's never made me feel any sort of emotion that intense. But a piece of music has, and it often does for a lot of people. And so the question still remains is, why do we like music? And so it turns out, this story starts with early humans. Music was always, we were pack animals, and we still are. And music was used as social bonding and for finding potential mates. The earliest music was rudimentary drum beats, and it was always accompanied by dance. And music today is still accompanied by dance pretty much all the time. And what this indicated was that whoever was performing, they were really strong, and they had extra time, and they had extra resources, and were able to do this. And so that was a really big check mark for both social status and potential mates, because that meant they could take care of their families and could provide for them. And these indicators became so important that music started to evolve with us. You see, at every point in history, music has always been evolving with us and changing. And even today, we can see with new brain mapping technology that emotions and movement and emotions and music are read in the same parts of the brain, which makes sense given they've always been together. And in addition to this, we make predictions about music. I mean, I'm pretty sure all of you can kind of sing like a major scale going up, and you know what's going to come next in music, and especially Western music, because that's a pretty cultural thing. We can all predict what's going to come next in a song. And these predictions are also really old, because say, when we were early humans and living on African savanna, we had to tell, was that noise a monkey that's harmless or a lion coming to kill us? That was important. And auditory processing was so important, in fact, that it lets off dopamine in the brain. And that's the happy chemical. That's the chemical you get if you were to take drugs or eat a really good piece of cheesecake. And this isn't the only part of music that lets off dopamine, because music moves through the brain really uniquely. It at first bypasses all logic and goes straight to the cerebellum, which is the oldest part of the brain, and that's responsible for processing emotions, among other things. And it's rare that a stimulus moves like this and is able to engage your entire brain, because after it goes to the cerebellum, it goes pretty much to every other part of the brain, and you start making predictions and all these other things, and that's what makes music so pleasurable, because it rarely happens. And so what first happens, you get this wave of emotions as it hits your cerebellum, and you start making predictions, which makes your brain feels good, and it goes eventually to the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory. And musical memories are some of the most powerful memories you can make. I mean, you hear all the time about people having breakup songs, or the song they have when they have their first kiss. They know exactly what song those are. And it's pretty common that people with dementia or Alzheimer's can remember pieces of music they heard in their childhood long after they've forgotten everything else about their life. Now, you may be wondering at this point, like, why do I like music that's different than everyone else? And that's a lot, like, mostly responsible for the stuff you listen to in your childhood and your teenage years. So this is really shaping your music preference. but all of that music is going to follow the same guidelines for why you think it's good. First off, you're going to connect with the emotions that the performer is conveying, because music, most importantly, was always meant to convey emotion and as a communication device. And the music, it's going to be different enough from stuff you've already listened to and you liked, so it's not boring, because if we listen to nursery rhymes all the time, we know what's going to happen, and we get bored because it's not interesting. However, it can't be too different from everything you've already heard, because then your brain can't make any predictions at all, and it's like trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle with 20 of the pieces missing. And so basically, your entire brain loves music. But as I was doing all this research and figuring all this out, it's fascinating and all, but the most important thing about music is in real life when you're teaching and performing and listening. And so this summer, I was lucky enough to be able to go to the middle school with Mr. Davis, who's the general music director there, and I was helping him give the summer instrumental lessons for the 5th grade band students. And so we only saw these kids, I think, for 3 hours total. It was 45 minutes a week, 1 day a week for 4 weeks. And we watched them grow with confidence and just their instruments so much, because the first day, with a lot of them, it took like 35 minutes to put together their instrument and like maybe make one sound, and then we had like 10 minutes to do other things. But by the end of the week, they were putting their instrument together. It took, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes, and we were starting to get them to play music, and you were starting to watch all these kids connect through music. And it was a really good experience for me. And I also gave lessons to a few other incoming high school students, Sam Berube and Haley Kalisic. I was teaching them saxophone, and that was also really fun. And then this next part of my project, I played in the Wedding Singer Pit Band. And so I learned how to play the bari saxophone for jazz band this winter. And so in the spring, Mrs. Jiggs comes and asks me, hey, do you want to play bari in the pit band? I say, sure. She says, there might be a little bit of tenor in it. I'm like, all right, that's fine. It's one saxophone, I'm sure I can play it. We get the music, it's a lot of tenor. I played bari twice. So I get it, like, well, how hard can that be? It's the same saxophone. I can already play the saxophone. It's easier. It's closer to my clarinet. It'll be fine. It wasn't. It was really difficult. There is like a good 2-week learning curve. But I was looking at this music like, oh my God, what have I done to myself? But it turned out, and I also ended up learning flute a little bit for the 5th grade camp, and that was easier. I had less trouble with that than tenor at first. I don't know. It was so finicky, but we figured it out, and clearly I had a great time. It was so fun, because it was all different music than I was used to, and with a different group of people. I think there were 11 or 12 of us total, and all different ages, and it was a really fun experience for me. It was so different than everything else I've done before. There's also a picture of me with Sam doing tenor. And so basically, the whole point of my project is that I wanted to know why I, along with pretty much the entire world, loves music. What is it about it? Why do we like it so much? And the short answer is we always have. It's always been with us. We've always loved music, and that's why it's such an important piece of our society today. And it's so rare to find someone who never once in their life has connected with a song or found any sort of music they like. It really doesn't happen. Because music, it's powerful, it's emotional, and it's nothing like cheesecake. Thank you.